Over the years, a jerkbait has really gone from being a cold water lure only to being one of the most versatile lures and a lure that can work throughout the entire year. It's something that I really have kept on the front deck of my boat no matter where I go in the country. And something that I love about a jerkbait is just its drawing power, its ability to bring fish from a long distance to eat that bait. Now, with that being said, there are two really big mistakes that a lot of anglers make when they are fishing a jerkbait, especially new anglers. And today, I want to talk about those. But real quick, real important announcement before we do. Right now at Omnia Fishing, you can get all Strike King products for 25% off. That's a great deal. It's a deal that only lasts for, I think, another 3 or 4 days, I think until the 23rd. So if you're watching this video before then, I'm gonna leave a link for all of my favorite Strike King products like the Hybrid Hunter and the Structured Jig and even some of the jerk baits all down below. You can click those, you can get 25% off. It's a great deal. Now, the first mistake that a lot of anglers make when fishing a jerkbait is thinking that there is such thing as a suspending jerkbait. And I know that this is gonna sound a little bit odd because you will see it all the time on every package of a lot of major jerkbait brands out there that this is a suspending jerkbait. And the truth is that there's really no such thing as a perfectly suspending jerkbait. And sure, when you have a jerkbait that's in a lab facility and they're doing tests on it, they know the water temperature and they can get that bait to pretty much suspend. But when you bring that jerkbait out into the wild, I guess I will call it, there's really no such thing as a perfectly suspending jerkbait. And the reason that this is important is because that jerkbait most of the time is either going to sink slowly or float slowly. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But first, I want to talk about all the different variables that affect a jerkbait that is suspending. And one of the biggest things is, like I said, water temperature. If your water temperature goes from really cold to really hot or really hot to really cold, that is going to affect how that jerkbait either rises or falls in the water column. So simply having a different water temp is really going to affect that bait. Another thing is the hooks that are on jerkbaits. A lot of suspending jerkbaits come with hooks that are made specifically for that jerkbait. And if you simply take one of those hooks off and replace it with a hook that even you think is a little bit similar, it may cause that bait to rise or fall in the water column. And so this is really, really important to understand because there's really, like I said, there's really no such thing as a perfectly suspending jerkbait. Again, another thing, if you're using fluorocarbon versus monofilament with a jerkbait, that's also going to affect the way that jerkbait rises or falls in the water column. So the reason that is so important is because I have seen a number of days out there on the water where a bait that slowly rises versus a bait that slowly, I'm doing this backwards, a bait that slowly falls versus a bait that slowly rises will get a substantial amount more bites than other baits, like substantially. I did have a jerkbait. I was fishing a jerkbait a number of years ago, and it would pretty much stay suspended, if not rise just a little bit slowly. It was a Vision 110. And I put bigger hooks on this bait, and it made that bait sink. And as soon as that bait started sinking like this, I mean, my bites, I started getting so many more bites on that jerkbait, and I didn't even realize it was because of the hooks that I had put on that causing that bait to sink. Now, when I lost that jerkbait, I put on a new jerkbait. I didn't put on new hooks. That bait was more suspending, a little bit rising again, and it started not getting bites. Like right away, I started not getting bites again. I realized what was happening. I switched out the hooks, and I started getting bites again. Like it is a really big difference. Also, you have baits on the market like a Berkley Stunna. This is one of my favorite jerk baits in the world right now, is a Berkley Stunna, because it slowly sinks. But there are times where you don't want a bait to slowly sink. You actually might want it to slowly rise. This is really, really important. I just heard a story while I was at a Berkley event, and the guy said that if you are fishing in really cold water temperature, like 38 to 40 degrees, actually having a jerkbait that slowly rises tends to be better than one that slowly falls. So a lot of times with that Berkley Stunna, because it slowly falls, if you actually replace the split rings with braided split rings, it'll cause that bait to slowly rise and you will be able to catch a lot more fish. So the big thing with jerk baits, the biggest mistake is thinking that there is such thing as suspending jerk bait. Yes, you're gonna have baits that are somewhat close, but usually it's a slow sink or a slow rise, and the difference between those can make a huge difference out there on the water. Now, let's talk about mistake number 2, and this is kind of an overarching thing, is that a lot of guys still do not utilize a jerk bait throughout the entire year. This really is a big mistake. A lot of guys still use it primarily in cold water. Also, they primarily use it in clear water. And although it works great in cold water, although it works great in clear water, a jerkbait has a very good bait fish presence and motion in the water. It can work throughout the entire year. I have caught jerkbait fish in the hottest part of the year in some places that you would never think to fish a jerkbait. As a matter of fact, we just saw Kevin Van Dam, well, not just, but we saw a number of years ago, he almost won a tournament on Ross Barnett Reservoir, a very muddy, shallow water, wood, lily pad covered reservoir, almost win a tournament by fishing that jerkbait in really shallow water because he was mimicking the shad spawn that was happening during that time. So to me, anytime that I know bass are eating a shad, really, or some sort of bait fish that is like that. Maybe in the north, it's a perch or an alewight even. Like if bass are really honing in on bait fish, I always have a jerk bait tied up. And the big things that I'm trying to figure out is what kind of sound does that bass want? Does it want something that has a lot of rattles or something that has 0 rattles? What's the color that those fish, and really I try to match the hatch a lot with a jerk bait. And the other thing is what we talked about earlier, do I let that bait slowly fall or slowly rise? Because that will help you to get a lot more bites. So to me, those are the 2 biggest mistakes when it comes to fishing a jerk bait. If you guys enjoyed this video, you can actually watch my most recent video right here. Also, don't forget about that sale at Omnia. I'll leave a link down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.